All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us. My name is Nate Cavanaugh. This is Eduardo Lundgren. We both work for Liferay, and we're the guys behind Alloy. So we've been working for the past year on building Alloy components inside of YUI 3. Kind of just want to give an introduction on what is Alloy.
Before you get started, if you could just make sure your screen's recording.
It is probably not recording, so let me go ahead and do that.
That would be important.
Yes, that is actually of utmost importance. So,
While you're doing that, I really appreciate that you're using Upstage.
oh, yes, we love it too. We love Keynote, but it's not exactly all that intuitive for.
Awesome, it's running.
All right, sweet, thank you. So. I can just Okay. So, what is AlloyUI? So AlloyUI is a set of UI widgets and utilities built on top of YUI 3. So a year ago, back in August of 2009, we kind of had this debate, me, Eduardo, and our boss, Brian, all sitting down trying to decide what was going to be the future of our user interface. What were we going to do? We really needed to change what we were doing because we're built on top of something that was quite inferior. Our choice was build on top of YUI 2 or YUI 3. YUI 3 was still in early PR and had no components other than overlay. The other option was YUI 2, which had a ton of components, best option possible, but the API, if you guys are using YUI 2, you know it's not exactly always 100% intuitive or consistent. So that was kind of the big debate between us. So what we decided was, let's go ahead and skate where the puck's going to be, not where it's been. So we just decided, let's do it. Let's go ahead and pay up the cost up front and start building the components ourselves. So we just got to work right away and started building. And the goal was we needed these components. We needed a library that was going to be able to scale between super lightweight deployments that would run in minimal systems and would run with a lean amount of code, all the way up to very rich UIs that needed a ton of interactivity. And Yahoo seems to have, all their properties seem to fit that exact same pattern. We basically, this is Liferay portal. It has a lot of user interactivity. We're the largest enterprise portal that is, and it's open source. We need a lot of user interactivity right up front, where users can disable it and not have to worry about what they're doing. But we need to give them the option to be able to disable this, or to be able to just start customizing it and providing more functionality on top of it. So inside of this, we needed to offer this functionality, and we needed to be able to quickly, because we had a certain timeline, we were already cutting it close because we had done a little bit of experimentation on top of YUI 2. We were switching. We needed to quickly be able to build out a ton of components and get them done. So we got to work, me and Eduardo, and in 6 months we were able to get about 60 components done, 60 components and utilities, and it really speaks to the power of YUI 3 that we were able to get so many done so quickly. The widget interface and the API is incredibly powerful. There are some complexities. There are some upfront costs to really understanding it. You can look at some of our components, and I look at them and I see, okay, we didn't really get what YUI 3 was trying to do or what the architecture meant. You shouldn't do that logic in a setter. Little things like that, but even apart from all that, it's extremely powerful, and we were able to just quickly not only prototype, but build components that were enterprise ready, and we're able to send a portal that has to support everything from IE6 and Firefox 2, even today, even though Mozilla doesn't support Firefox 2, up to the latest and greatest Chrome, IE9, even though, it's still beta, that's what we have to support. So we needed to hurry up and build these. There's two ways that you're going to see in the demos that we're going to go through. We're just going to go through as fast as we can, show as many of the components as we can. AUI is basically just our pre-configured service layer object. It's just a global object we create that we use, but it's essentially, we provide it to Liferay developers so as not to clobber the YUI object. We pre-configure it with our metadata and a few other minor modifications. But if you want to use our modules from the gallery, everything we have is up there in the gallery as well. We need to do a few things for HTML5 that are not asynchronously loaded. They need to be synchronously loaded. So we do that inside of AUI versus the gallery, which is always asynchronously loaded. So you'll notice that, but that would be the only difference. So if you see something in the code where you're like, whoa, what is that? That's essentially the main difference. So going through the demos, I'm going to go through the first set, and Eduardo is going to go through the next set. And there's quite a few to go through. So first demo would be carousel. This is something that we use in our website. It just needed basic functionality, be able to take a set of elements, just basic elements, and not only have them iterate over a timer, but to be able to click through them on a random, as the user desired, and then continue on animating from there. So let me go ahead and switch over to the code. And you basically see all that's required here is that it just has a div, elements, and then in here you say new carousel, and then you can set interval time, how often does it repeat, the content box, the content box is the demo, and active index, it can be an integer, 0 through n, whatever, or if you pass in a string, you just pass in rand, and it will randomly choose any one through the collection. And then you just give it dimensions, whatever the dimensions you want to set. You can choose to optionally, sorry, this is not my normal computer. You can choose to set which elements inside of that box you want to pull from. You can decide just show images, just don't. Just show divs, just show paragraphs. And then you can also listen for whenever certain things, like any widget we have, all the attribute event system. And you can listen for the individual changes. Let me see. Let me switch over. Yeah, for that one, I think that one's really basic. So let me switch over here. Okay, the next one we did was Node. We actually made quite a few extensions to the Node interface. Eduardo and I come from a jQuery background, which, depending on the group you're talking to, that's either a good thing or a bad thing. So, but there's a lot of good things to be said about jQuery, and a lot of it is the ease of use and power. And that was something we wanted to bring over in that extension. We really wanted, whenever we use it and whenever the other developers in the organization use it, to have that same power and same ease of use. And so what we do is whenever it's included as part of our extensions, we extend the Node object to bring over certain sugar functions. And I think Matt has already started bringing over a couple of these in. But we've decided to bring over a lot of other ones that we needed. So I'll kind of showcase a few of these here. Adder. Adder basically will grab any attribute, whether it's a property or an actual attribute, decide which one it is in the object, and return you the right one. So you don't have to decide, is this actually an attribute or a property in the object? Which one is the browser expecting me to pull from? It will determine the right one for you and return that. Clone. It will return a clone, like an actual clone for you, i.e., if you clone a node, it will clone the events with it, which it should not be doing. This will normalize that. So it will return you an actual cloned node without the events cloned on it. Append to, append to, you can just specify append to some element on the page. It can be a selector or a node. It can be anything you'd pass to the node interface. Place after, place before, prepend to, all typical DOM modification stuff. Some other ones we have is center. So you can just call center on some item, and it'll center on the page if nothing's passed in. If you pass in a selector of something, like let's say container 1, it will center to just in the context within that item. So which is helpful to not have to calculate out set x, y, grab, and do all that math. Hide, show, toggle. This one behaves a little bit differently than what you might be used to if you ever use jQuery or something like that. We kind of follow a slightly different philosophy. Our hide show, instead of setting display none, display, visibility hidden or anything like that, we add a CSS class, and we define that in our CSS styles that actually just hides that. And so hide adds the CSS class, show removes that CSS class. Instead of having to pre-calculate, should this be a display inline element, display block element, doing all of that math on the client side, figuring all that out, we just hide and show a class and allow the CSS to determine how that implementation goes. Because in all honesty, that may need to be visible to a screen reader, different things like that. So you can actually pass in what CSS class gets used. So by default, it's AUI helper hidden. But we also have one called accessible, which will allow it to be accessible to screen readers, but hidden from sighted users. And yeah, you can also pass in any CSS class you have that you have an implementation for. Show, you can go ahead and remove anyone you want to specify. And toggle will, of course, just toggle that CSS class on and off. Ancestors will, of course, bring you a collection of all the ancestors. You can pass in, a div. You can pass in any selector you want, but it'll give you the collection above where you're at. Get DOM. Oops. The normal way to do this is to do something like y.node.get DOM node or something like that. So it's kind of a little more verbose. So we just add a method just to get DOM. Hover is actually really nice. You can just pass in a function to hover over, a function that executes when you move out. But if you pass in an object, right here I show this aspect off a little bit more. You can actually pass in keyed values over, out, and then specify delays for how long those interact. So if you want to actually have a menu or something like that where you hover over it, and then as you move out, it waits until you actually execute hiding it or something like that. It's very easy to do. Swallow event, very simply, if you just want to stop it from propagating up the event up to a parent node. For instance, good example is if you just don't want to notify the body of some event. You just want to swallow it really quick. Just swallow event click. If you pass in true, which I'm not a big fan of passing in booleans as arguments, but in this case, it just was what we needed, so we did it. You pass in true, and what it'll do is just prevent the default action. So it's just a really quick way to just stop, like just calling halt, to just stop the default action from happening. So if you just want to stop a click from doing what it normally would do, you just call swallow event click. Selectable and unselectable. If you just have a block with text that you just don't want to be selectable if you're going to drag or going to do some interaction with it, just call unselectable or selectable. Empty does what it says, just empty the object. Val, return you the value of what you're going to, like if you're dealing with form and inputs, you can also set. So if you set, it will set it in there. Text will return you the text and not the nodes, and same with also setting value. These ones are also helpful if you need to get border width, get margin, get padding. You can actually specify what sides to do, and it will calculate out the side. So if you want to grab the top and left sides added together, or the left and right sides added together, it will actually give you the two sides combined. Then, so if you want HTML, it will actually return you the inner HTML. If you want to set, the HTML, you can do that as well. And same for outer HTML. Radio class does essentially, if you have a list of siblings, you want to add a class to one, but remove that same class from all of its siblings, it will do that. GUID will basically add a unique ID to a specific element with a specific prefix, and reset ID will essentially just reset the ID, and you can specify what ID to give it. Select text in a form field will select the text you want. We also have a.nodelist.create. We'll create an actual node list for you and return as child nodes. And then we also have helper utilities, a.getBody, a.getDoc, and a.getWin. These will actually return you the config. There's a specified pattern that you're supposed to use, config.win, config.doc. They're kind of they're the best practice, and we're going to cover that tomorrow in our next talk. But these will return you the correct instances with the node representation. So you don't have to worry about always doing something like a.1, document.body in your code. You can just do a.getBody or y.getBody, whichever one you prefer, and then you're good to go. So let me go back here. So dialog, that one's actually really nice because dialog, we actually provided quite a few options. Basically, you can stack dialogues. You can have a modal dialog. You can easily change the title and the body to have content. Let me go ahead and create a new one. You can see, and it also will provide a loading mask. So as you're loading it, if you're doing a I/O configuration, and Eduardo is going to cover that in his demos about how to plug individual widgets and nodes for that. But it'll show the loading mask to handle that. Wait, let me see. So then if I turn off the stacking, it will no longer stack. And it's using our overlay manager. You can create as many overlay managers as you want, but basically any overlay in the system, you can have it and determine whether to stack the items, when to focus them, when to blur them, which order in the system they should have, and things like that. So if I go ahead and toggle modal back to on, I can, and I turn stack back to on as well. Yeah.
Can use the keyboard too.
Oh, to focus, yeah. Yeah, when you have the, the overlay manager allows you to use the keyboard to focus and move between the actual overlays in the system. Oh, wait, I'm always using this keyboard wrong. Okay. So let me go ahead and show what that code looks like. So dialog looks like this. So you just say new dialog, and you just give it a title, a height, a width, and you can specify whether to stack by default, and you can turn that off, or you can just ignore it. By default, it will be true. And you can specify the X, Y, and say, where on the page should it be. And you can also say whether it should be resizable or draggable. So if I set this to false and set this to true, oops, cancel. Should not have fat fingered that one. So now it's resizable. But it's not draggable. Oops. So then you can also specify there's a lot of other options, very rich interface, because you can specify whether to disable the close button, whether to add other icons that have other functionality. You can add in a refresh icon that has a specific handler. And then each of the buttons can be configured. You can have them, you can not have them. And then you can just call .render. And then you can, of course, plug it with the I/O plugin that, like Eduardo will discuss, and you can just create it. So it has a very rich API, very powerful, and of course extends from widget, and so you get all the benefits of that. Go back here. So, and then we also have a color picker. So this color picker Let me go ahead and load this one. So the color picker right here, you can specify a trigger. So basically whatever you want to click. But by default, it just creates one. And by default, you actually don't need any of this. But unless you specify something in there to use, it won't update the value to anything. It will internally update its own value and display it. But what will happen is it will look like this. So it'll display this button, and it will update these values in here, which may or may not be useful. Maybe you only want to present that to the user and allow them to copy and paste that out. So as they move around, but you may want this to be going into a hidden input or to some sort of input or affecting something else on the page. You may want to be setting a background color. So what you can do is just say, in the color change event, this.getHex. We also have get RGB, get HSV. There's different color formats, but hex is the one that is pretty common for doing web work. So yeah, so you can listen there. A lot of times people don't actually want it to be attached to a button, or they want it to attach to something else. Oh, Eduardo. Okay. Then, yeah, so if you want it to go to something else, you can just allow the trigger. And then instead of actually creating a button for you to go to, you can actually just specify the input. And so now the input is what you will control it. But then one of the requests we got for this was this UI for this thing is a little too noisy. It doesn't really fit into the design pattern they wanted. So we went ahead and created a plugin that allows you to specify a grid and just a range of colors that you want to be presented to the user. And it uses the same underlying data model, and it uses the same, the same event system. But instead of that large interface for selecting all that range of colors, you can provide them just a very simple, range of options that are pre-configured, and only those are allowed. So which is pretty helpful for situations like in mail and things like that. Using the color picker, or what the color picker uses is the color utility, which is right here. The color utility basically is just a utility that we created to normalize the conversion of colors. To converting between RGB and HSV, RGB and hex, RGB and HSL, HSB, just the range of different options we had, and then also we kind of decided on RGB as like the standard input to use, and we needed some way to get the RGB value of pretty much any value we pass in, be it HSL, RGB, hex, an actual HTML keyword that gets passed in. So we have a method in there to do that. So if I click on any of these, you can see that as I click through, it updates these fields. But I'm going to switch through the demo and kind of show the methods that get called on those. So ignore all of this, because this is just form to push it into. But essentially what I'm doing right here is I'm saying just get RGB, and this will return me an RGB object that just says R, G, and B property fields on it. And in there, I'm just simply saying, from there I'm just converting them down into their appropriate values, HSL, HSB, HSV, and hex. And you can pretty much pass in anything you want into get RGB. I could pass in light blue. I could pass in, cyan, like that. Pretty much anything, and it will do a very best guess scenario of whatever it can try to calculate out, and give you back an RGB object representing it. So yeah, it pretty much allows us to use the color utilities all the way across. What's the time at? Okay. Oops. And then, so I'm going to quickly jump through. Close that one. Oh yeah, progress bar is really nice because basically we created the progress bar to update users. It's very nice. It allows you to essentially show the progress of anything going on. That one is right here. So right here, you just create it, new progress bar, set the bounding box. On complete, you can set a label for it, or you can set the label to being anything you want. And whenever the value changes, you can set it to be whatever the value is for the value, if you want to do that. Or you can do something else. And what we did was, by default, it doesn't have any sort of animating properties. So we just created an asynchronous queue to just iterate over and on click, just loop over. If we did a while loop, we could have done that as well, but it just was looping over too fast. So we needed something that would kind of demo a little bit better. So yeah, so that's that one. It just animates over. Let me go ahead and go to the next slide. Rating, selector. Okay, yeah, selector is really nice. Basically, we added, going back to the jQuery thing, we added a bunch of convenient selectors that Sizzle and jQuery also use that we found useful and wanted to. So we added an extension to selector, and all of these that are here on the side that you can see are also available. So pretty much button, you can see that it selects just the buttons. Checkbox, checked, disabled, enabled, file, image, input, password, radio, reset, selected, submit, etc. It also does the content ones such as parent, header, and hidden invisible. And hidden invisible also take into account whether it's using the CSS class that we, the framework class that we use. So but it's also smart enough to guess if it's offset calculations or hidden and things like that. So, but basically, it's just a very nice and convenient way to, grab a certain range of elements based on just the selector. So let me go ahead and go here. Toolbar is very nice. Just a simple toolbar, but the way to configure it is you just pass in children with an object configuration, and the children are just button item instances. You can create a button item by itself, and you'll just have a single button. But you can also pass them as children to the toolbar, and it will keep it as a collection. It will round the corners on the edges, and it will loop over and make sure that they're all kept in the proper order. And then you can also listen with one delegate to a specific click, and then do specific actions to each one. So if I click on here, it'll just keep adding because I added a really useless listener to it, but at least shows that it has functionality. But yeah, not much code to get it to instantiate. So let me go ahead and close that. Text box list is actually a little bit more interesting and more useful. And I think Ryan Grove had started work on something similar to this, but we've had it for a while. And it extends from our autocomplete component. But basically, it's you can just start typing, and if you have a data set that you want to, like some sort of data source that you want to query against, you can start auto-completing. And then you can start using the keyboard to actually, start moving over and removing items. So if I go ahead and if I add Vermont again, it'll, subtly alert me that that's already been added. Do Utah, it'll do that. But if I go Hawaii, it'll let me keep adding, and it'll also let me just keep removing all of them. And the code to do that, I can go ahead and show you that one, is right here. So I have a small local data source, just an array of states and all their friendly and helpful sayings and mottos. And then I just pass in a data source with a schema along with it. And I say, what do I want to match inside of the schema? And I can specify some options that I would pass to an autocomplete. Because essentially, text box list just extends from autocomplete. So we get a lot of the benefits that you get from autocomplete. And I can also manually add in specific items into the instance. So I can say, okay, add in Washington, Utah, and Vermont, and then just have those pre-selected. Then from there, I can manually focus some element in there, and it will focus the item in the demo. So if I refresh, it'll focus that. Okay, the mouse is going to have to sit right there. So yeah, that one, it's fairly easy to create and, an easy way to reuse the code for that. So the next one, I'm going to go, and this will be my last one before Eduardo showcases his, is, oops. Okay, I can't use the mouse anymore. I'm unfortunately as dangerous as my mother is with it. So, okay, so what we started doing was, I saw recently that in the gallery there's a Raphael port that has been brought into the gallery, and we'd actually started working on kind of a port of Raphael ourselves. But instead of doing a strict port, what we wanted to do was do something that was a port of the library, but something that kind of fit better into the YUI architecture and fit into our needs a little bit better, and kind of follow that pattern. So what we did was we ported it over, did a lot of source formatting to it, and basically broke it up into the individual modules. YUI 3.2 brought over test feature loading to where, based on your browser, based on your user agent, and based on if your user agent has certain features enabled, it will just load in certain things. So we ripped out the VML engine, and only IE will get the VML engine. Only browsers that support SVG, so IE9 will get SVG. There's a piece in there to handle mobile Safari. Only mobile Safari will get that piece, bundled in. And so we split all those pieces out, and we're taking advantage of that with 3.2. And you can kind of see that, all of the API is there. Most of it has been ported over. The pieces, there's only one actual method that's been changed, which is whether to have a set, because set doesn't really fit with the whole paradigm. So it's just create set inside of ours. And so, but we have all the benefits. Of course, works on iOS devices and all of that. So yeah, if we could connect over the network, I could show you that, but I don't believe it does. Yeah, so you get all the benefits of SVG and basically having it being able to work in work across the browsers. Oops. And then let's see. Yeah, and so these are pieces. This is one that is not in the gallery right now, but it's coming in the next, I think, like 2 weeks. So it should be there fairly soon. But it's fairly rich. We've been testing it, and everything's been working pretty darn well, except that animation piece seemed to, yeah. But yeah, everything's been going good on that, and we have some other pieces coming that I do not have a demo for right now. Yeah, editor, we are fully skinning with the Alloy toolbar. Dave had kind of shown an example of that at one point, but we're actually fully supporting that with other Alloy components, overlays and things like that. So where the editor will just come pre-skinned for you, so you don't have to rewrite all of that. And then also video, HTML5 video, to where it will upscale. One of the benefits of that is that we're really pushing is that basically Firefox has decided, Mozilla's kind of just decided as policy that they're only going to support Ogg-Vorbis encoded formats, and kind of makes it tough if you have all H.264 encoded media. Most people that we know don't want to re-encode their video. So we just, with our HTML5 video for Firefox by default, downgrade to Flash, i.e. downgrade to Flash. Everything else, upscaled to HTML5. You can, of course, control that. If you have, Ogg-Vorbis, you can just pass in the URL to that. You can pass in the URLs to any of the individual videos you want, but by default, we just automatically handle rerouting those to the specific ones. So that's coming in the gallery as well in the next couple of weeks. So yeah, the next component that we'll be talking about is the calendar, which is a good one. Eduardo will be talking about that. So go ahead.
First, thank you for all of you here watching our presentation.
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, that will be helpful.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so just in addition for the drawing API, Nate just showed it to you guys. Our demos we just showed is they are the same demos the Raphael.js framework is using, just only running Alloy, the port from the drawing, just to keep it clear. So I'm going to talk about more higher level components that we are working on, that are, few of them, like the resize, is not that higher level, but it's important to mention because this component was ported to the YUI core, and then I will dig into it and explain the architecture behind it and how we implemented the resize algorithm, because sometimes when you implemented a resize, you lost events and pixel jumps, and you actually doesn't have a good end result. So I will go through a little bit into the resize. But the other ones, I will just show like superficial demos and maybe show the source code. So the calendar one was one we decided that was really important for us to work on. And it was one of our first components we built. So we are actually every day making them better and better. So it's pretty much a widget component, the calendar. And you can render it in lines like that. And here I'm not using tables or everything. You can use this, but I'm using divs to be more fast when you change month. I'm not writing all the divs again. I'm just hiding and showing the padding divs and the other month, days, and stuff. For example, if I want to disable the days in the other month, I just change options, and the UI set attribute from the widget will be automatically invoked to update things. So I can select dates here, and I can actually have the array of dates being fired here, so you can reuse the selected dates. You can limit the minimal date, the maximum date. So you have a lot of options. You can go through the calendar and play with it. But this dayline calendar sometimes is useful, but usually you use a calendar to date picker something. And then we have a date picker that is an extension from calendar that you can actually plug this to an input field or associate with the input field. And then you can change the date or select to multiple dates like in this demo. Right? You can change the formatter. There is a function you can format the output of the selected date. Right? And then a pretty useful use case in our portal is select dates using select. So we built a component that handles that for you. And for example, if you disable dates here, it will disable here too. So if you navigate, for example, into the first year, that is 2000. Then when you go here, everything is integrated. So November is fine, October too. But when you go to, so everything is disabled because you set the range to be 2000 and some other year. So everything is kind of integrated and working. I'll show the code. Okay, so yeah, so the calendar constructor is like the other ones. You just can specify the date format of the output. You can allow none, so it means that you can have a calendar without any selected date. You can show today, and show today is just the label here. You can show the today labels here in the bottom. So you have useful options. And also you have callbacks, like when you select a date, you want to fire an event and get the selected date. So you can render this calendar inside something. So yeah, it's pretty much the widget API being used. So here's the date picker too, right?
You had something up above that select multiple dates. Does that sort of allow grabbing an interval dates?
Actually, you can select multiple dates. Like doesn't mean it's an interval. You can select like random dates in the calendar. Yeah, it might be an option to be added, so select range. But actually, you can do kind of range here. You can select two dates, and then you can get the first date and the last date and use that as a range. So you can kind of implement this using the API, right? So yeah, this is the calendar. We have it. And then one component we are actually using a lot in Liferay portal is the form validator. It looks like a very simple component, But when you go to implement it, you have a lot of issues in Internet Explorer and in different types of browsers. So you have to be very careful how you build a form validator. Otherwise, people just won't be able to use easily your API. And we had a lot of discussions which is the best approach to implement a form validator. Few people prefer the classical way of implementing it, like OOP style, a lot of classes. For each type of data, you create a new class, and you extend the base class and implement your custom role and everything. So I don't agree with that, so I just came with an easier API to handle the form validation, where I have a set of roles implemented by default. For example, if you want to validate an email, I will show the code, but you just set a flag to true or false email, and internally I already implemented the rejects. I got from a project from another guy that he implemented the rejects based on the RFC to email. So I will explain this better with the source code. So here is the form, right? Here is this form you are seeing here. So I have here the input field, and pay attention in the name, right? Because the name is really important to use the API in here. Without a name, it's harder to use. You can pass the reference, but I mean, it's easier if you just pay attention to the name and see how come I'm integrating the API. So you have the name of the input fields, right? You have and then you can associate for each name an object that contains all the roles you want to make that field respect. So when you go to the constructor, I'm just creating a form validator and pointing to the bounding box is my form, right? I can point to this form, and then I can specify few options I will explain later. But the most important option is the roles, right? I follow this approach because I think it's easier. So here you have the name of the field in the first as the key of the object. So you can have like string keys too. So inside each object, you can specify all the options you want to this field respect. For example, the picture field, I'm telling it this is required, and I'm accepting files JPG, GIF, and PNG. For age, I can create custom rules. I will show how to create custom rules, and then you can extend the behavior of your widget. You can say it's digits. The range of the age, I only accept people from 18 to 50. It's an email, and the email is required. Like, it's the name of the input, so it could be anything you want. But I'm saying this. It's required, and it's also need to respect the email rejects. So pretty much the same thing. If you need a URL, you just get the URL here. And okay, so you can also specify you can also override the default messages for each validation. For example, if I validate the email, right? It will show the default message like saying this is not a valid email, but you can actually say to this field, the input field called name, in the rule called email, I want to do a custom message. So you can, the API is flexible to do that. And I have few callbacks that these callbacks are enough for you to implement any kind of messaging system without have to plug classes to control how your errors are being displayed. You just use the callbacks, or you can create, if you want something more classical, you can create a plugin. That is a plugin messaging system that you can plug to your form validator, and then when the error field callback happens, it will fire for each field is invalid. So you can use the plugin to detect which fields are not valid, then show some messaging system. So I will show here, like if I go here in the name and I blur the field, it will say it's not valid. So you can see fire the validate field. Every time it validates a field, regardless if it's valid or not, it fires the validate field for each field is being validated. And then if it's valid, it fires the valid field. If it's not valid, it fires the error field callback. So you have a lot of flexibility here, but you can tell I have to blur the field to validate, right? But this field is not required because of this is not blurring. But what if I need to change that to have a validation while the user types something or do some other behavior? So I have a validate on input option attribute that when the user types, it validates. So for example, age, I'm typing here, but it's only digits, right? So I have to put digits here. But I have another rule. I have another rule in my stack. The rule is it should be a range between 18 and 50. So you kind of combine everything here. So when you submit the form, you can see a lot of events being fired for each field. So you can actually customize the behavior of the style of the field and everything. Right? So it's our form validator, and we are using this in big applications, big clients, in all browsers, and everything works fine. We have another low-level components that are, one thing we noted in most part of the UI frameworks, people, every time they need a mask or something like that, they just create again the logic to handle that mask system. For example, you have a dialog, you want to do a model in the page, like you want to overlay the page, you just re-implement. You have you want to mask a dialog, just the content you do again. So we just split the logic out and we create an overlay mask component that is just an overlay that is more smart. You can set, oh, this overlay I want to mask the document, or I want to mask a dialog or anything else. And then you can easily reuse the API. For example, this is a content in your page and you want to mask the first section, this section here. So you can specify the section you want to mask, or you can mask everything, or even mask the document using the same instance. And this is a low-level component in our opinion, because you can use in dialog, you can use in any widget you are implementing. And also we have an extension of the mask, that is the loading mask. That is just the same thing, only passing a centered icon. Remember the API Nate showed about the node that you can only call node.center? Okay, so this is an extension. This is a node we just called node.center, and then it becomes centered in here. So everything is becoming combined. Our low-level components and our higher-level components are starting to make sense, right, when you actually use them. Okay, so this is one basic component. We have it. And then all those components combined allowed us build more higher components, like we were talking before. And then, like an image gallery is a pretty common client request. And in a portal, we have different kind of application and portlets that people want to publish galleries, publish images. And we didn't have a solution on YUI before. When we released this image gallery, I think, I don't know, maybe we were the first gallery in the YUI at that point. So, okay, so these are the pictures I'm using actually in the source code I will show here real quick. This is an example of the gallery integrated with YQL. I'm just inserting in all Flickr, but YUI conf word. Right? I just put safe search, just make sure nobody takes a weird picture and show to you. And then I'm just looping through the JSON object that returns. And I'm appending some template to something. So this is just the demo, right? It's not the thing. The template picture is just a href anchor with an image inside, right? So what is that? I'm just creating a markup, a simple markup in my HTML that is only anchor and image. And my image gallery just need to get the collection of nodes or point to the selector that will return the node list. And then they will use all the matched elements as elements from my image gallery. Right? So I have a few options I will show later, but it's pretty much so. If I want to see this in action, so this is a gallery, right? I think this is Ryan. And then you can go with the keyboard right here. You can actually hit play. And you can see when I hit play, these are buttons. The button item, the same item is being used on the widget, on the toolbar Nate showed. This thing here, we have a paginator component that actually paginates 1, 2, 3, like simple anchors. We are just reusing the paginator widget here, and then we are restyling the elements to be the thumbnails of the things. So everything is starting to make sense, and the widget system the YUI give to us are starting to connect in our application and starting to make sense for us. So,
Can you refresh that?
oh, sorry?
Just added a picture.
Oh, do you want a picture?
Refresh.
Refresh the page.
Oh, okay.
See if, how fast that.
Oh, it depends on the network.
Well, I think it depends on YQL.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
It's
so,
probably cache.
yeah,
Wondering, like, why?
yeah, but actually about the thing, we have few options that you can preload all the images, the selector grabs. But sometimes, like, I think it was the Flickr talk yesterday, who was talking about network traffic and don't make your users spend money when they don't need it. So you can just disable it. You can just preload the neighbor images because this is useful, right? For example, you don't want the user spend money, but too much money, but just a few money to preload the next image to make sure it will be more comfortable when he is navigating through the demo. So if I allow the preload neighbor image, when I hit this image, it automatically loads the two images next to me, right?
Let me try one thing.
Oh. Clear the cache? Yeah. Okay, so clearing the cache, it's fast. The work is fast. Okay, so you can preload the neighbor image and everything. So you can see there is arrays here, right? And there is paginator here, buttons. But sometimes the user just want this dialog in the center to show the picture. And then you can use the base class for the image gallery because image gallery is a class that extends from image viewer. Image viewer just have this dialog in the center, right? But even if you are using the image gallery, you don't need to change your class if you don't only need the arrows here. So I added options to this, like show arrows, show close, max height. Sometimes this option is good because, see, the picture, if the projector was not good, I could not see this picture. So I with these options, I just refresh the page, passing them, and I can actually limit the size of the image. Actually, I'm using JavaScript to resize it, so few image could look weird. So yeah, so caption from title. We can grab all the caption thing from the title and everything from the image. Yeah, and we try, every time we implement one widget like that, we try to make this accessible and, yeah, like we always try to make it in the correct way. All right, so, okay, resize is the one I want to dig a little bit into because resize, when you just see boxes being resized, you think, oh, this is very easy and simple to build. But actually, this one, resize was one of the most complex components I've wrote in Alloy. It doesn't mean it's like difficult. It's just complex because when you are handling just the divs like that, this is very simple, right? You have a box and you can, when I do that, I increase the width. When I do that, I increase the height, right? But that's fine. To do basic logics, it's fine. But when you grab this handle here, right, you have to change the top and the left, not the width and the height. That's still easy. But when you start combine these things, and for example, here, if I drag here, I just change the height. But I have options. I have plugins which I can specify this resize element is constrained, and I want to respect the ratio. I want a proportional resize. I have to calculate the other movement based from the height. So when I move the height, I have to recalculate the width based on the proportion. It's okay, but when these things start combining each other, and when you put constraint to restrict based on a container and combine with aspect ratio and stuff, so it starts to become like weird, but we finally found a solution, and that's in the core for you guys in the YUI. So you can resize relative elements, absolute elements, fixed elements, not on IE, relative constrained. You can resize images, right? Like image. Text areas, you can resize actually any kind of input, a button or everything. This is a demo I just built just to show you can use the callbacks to be like a split panel. Here, when I resize, only this div is resizable. This div is not resizable. I only calculate the width based on the delta here, right? So just few demos. This is a simple, oh, this is black for you guys? Okay, so it should be an opacity, so.
Oh, no, it is on yours. I think it's just the color.
Okay.
Zoom in.
Okay, that's fine, I can.
Oh, I set it lower.
is the image cropper? Okay, that's fine. I can find it later. This is it's an image cropper demo I've built based on the resizable API. So one thing I want to show you is like this. When you resize things, I'm using a constrainment plugin to not allow my movement go outside this container, right? That's fine. This is just if the top here is greater or lower than something, doesn't stop the movement. But it's not like that. Because if you do like you move your mouse really quick, you can lose events like the browser. My my logic could be waiting for something that happens at one moment, and you are very fast using your computer, so I can lose that tracking. So I have to kind of predict when the user do movement. So when I do that, I don't care if the pixel here is being calculated with the same logic I was doing before. I just check the user is way much farther than I need. So I just set this to the maximum top and the maximum left. So there's some kind of trick stuff being done here that is pretty useful to make it stable. Like if you do that, like if you do open like applications that has resize, you can do that test for me. You can do like that. It will jump around and stuff will be weird. Not all resizes following this practice. So going faster a little bit because of we are running out of time. The resize API is like that, right? It's very simple. You can create a y.resize and you can specify a node, right? And then you can specify the handles. If you want all handles, what is handle? Handle is these things here, which you grab and do the movement. This is the right handle. This is the left handle. This is the bottom. And then this one is the combination of right and bottom. It's BR. So you can specify which handles you want here. Right? You can attach events when start, when resize, when align, when end. Right? And I have few plugins. Right? This resize constraint plugin, I like this because you can specify tick movements. What is that? I think it's this example. You can jump some pixels when you resize. See, it's jumping like 20 pixels. You can actually make it higher. You can specify min width, max width, preserve radial. So you can tell when I drag here, not only like this one. This one, just the resize thing, just the width is being already mentioned. Here, actually, it respects the height too. So it's the constrained plugin that takes care of it for you. You have also a resize proxy plugin, which you can do the mask. For example, this thing, no, this is proxy. I guess it's this one. This one is just the element being resized. At this one, you can tell there's a proxy, like this dashed border element. You can actually change the element you need to do this. So you can change your element and everything. So nowadays, in the resize element, we have three classes. The resize base, that is this one. We have the plugin constrained, the resize constrained, and we have the resize proxy. So we have these three things already in the YUI core. Yeah. So I think I'll just jump to my the what? Sorry.
We have 2 minutes. 1 minute.
Okay, so I'll go through really quick in the image gallery I already showed.
You'll have to jump to that one.
Okay, so this one.
Yeah.
Okay, so this demo is actually just a list, right? But behind, we are using here a component called portal layout that we probably need to rename this component later. And it handles maybe mainly a draggable list. You can it handles a draggable list, and you can nest things. Because we notice in the Liferay portal, when you work with the layout, you don't need just to make drag and drop and few callbacks when you over some portlet and then your element move to another place. You actually need something more smart. And then we built a component that you can drag things, right? You can attach this blue line here. It's a placeholder. You can do any kind of style you want. And then I will expand this thing, and you will notice that we have a quadrant detection. Here, who didn't miss the math class, there is a thing called quadrant that you can do here's the second quadrant, here's the first quadrant, here's the fourth, here's the third. Why we are doing all that things? Maybe we don't need that, but we need that. Because imagine if you want a drag-drop system that you want to placeholder an element in the right top corner. So you can do an if this. If I'm in the quadrant number 2, just placeholder something here. Oh, just position something here. If I'm in this quadrant, just place something here. So we have a lot of flexibility to do any kind of API we want. So we can create user drag lists like that. And actually, this thing, we actually extended that. And we are using this in the complex layout system in Liferay. I think you guys remember when Nate was demonstrating this thing. It's the same component that is handled the drag list is handled the layout. But we have a portlet here, an application called nested portlet, right? And then you can see now I have one port layout inside another. So I can handle nested layouts. I can do everything based on that math-based things, right? So it's easy to implement your custom logic. So we have this component too. Yeah, and the last one I will jump through the scheduler, right? What is that? One client came to us and asked us to build a Google Calendar thing based on Alloy. And we thought, oh, maybe we don't have time to build that in 1 month. But we actually could build all this entire scheduler component in 3 weeks because of all the good API and the good practice YY3 give to us. And then I will demo a little bit this component, right? It's pretty much has the timeline here. You can see like the end of the box. I can specify how many hours I want, or if it's 24-hour, so ISO or American style hours. You can navigate through month, right? And everything here is using widget. And it's not a big entire chunk of code and doing something. It actually has a little architecture behind it that you have a view and you have multiple views where you can plug the views here, and these widgets respect the views. And then the view can talk to the based class, which specify the incrementation for the date. For example, here I'm in the day view. The day view increments 1 and 1 day. If I go to the week view, I don't want to increment 1. I increment 7 and 7, right? The month view here, I increment 1 month and 1 month. So yeah, we kind of have all these weird things to handle. So I will show the architecture later. So I can load a collection of events that actually is the scheduler for the talk. I think we are here, right? Yeah, I'll move it to see what happened. Oh. Okay, so you can actually create more events here. And I have an intersection algorithm that I can detect when a date is over another date and resync the UI, right? This is kind of small because of the screen, but you can create one event. You can drag and drop like your November 10:30 to 4 p.m. So I can say something, right? And then I can specify if it's a repeatable event or anything like that. So I can create another event that conflict with this event, right? So it automatically syncs the UI and fire the correct event. If you go here, you will see a lot of events being fired. For example, I just recorded an event called SSDSD. So I can go to month view too, and I can see actually the events being plotted. We need to leak some UI things like the overlay is not showing everything. So it's better. It's a better version, but you can actually navigate through month, and it resyncs the UI. And every time you navigate, it caches the state of the nodes so it doesn't become slow or consuming memory while you navigate the thing. So yeah, so this is the kind of widget you could build with YUI and Alloy together. And to build this widget, we had to build some utilities behind. Like we have a date math class that handles the date, checks if the first day of the week, calculates the first day of the week based on any date. We have a date math class, math utility that round numbers, absolute numbers, and do math operations that is not like the YUI API doesn't have yet. So we kind of have a few interesting options that you can probably reuse on your daily routine.
And on our big next gallery push, we're going to be adding that to the gallery as well. So.
Yeah, so I'm done for my part.
Okay. Yeah, and so I think, we've gone a minute or two over. So, there's a ton more. That it says Whirlwind Tour, so like any tornado, there's going to be collateral damage, and we missed quite a bit. But, just if you guys have any questions, I don't know if we have time for Q&A, but we're going to be around today and tomorrow, and so just feel free to, come up and shake us and say hi and, anything.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys.